Hide and Seek by Juliet's Emo Phase. Harry stood with his back pressed against the cool white tiles, begging his vision to stop swimming in the low light of the men's toilet. The baseline pulsed from outside the door, adding to his disorientation, and he hiccuped angrily. He needed to get a grip. So what if Cormac was here? It had been a couple of weeks. He could deal with seeing him again, surely. He wasn't some delicate flower. Except, he was already feeling like a third wheel anyway with Seamus and Dean, and had probably indulged in one too many shots before he'd caught a glimpse of that curly light brown hair. Harry was pretty certain Mac hadn't seen him in return, but honestly, he'd dived into the loo so fast he couldn't really swear either way. Shame burned through him. He'd had a few breakups before, but Cormac had been his first serious boyfriend. The one he'd introduced his mates actually as his boyfriend. The only one he'd gone on holiday with, talked about a future with. Only to be dumped out of the blue, for no real reason, over the phone. Bastard, Harry muttered bitterly, and took a swig of the beer he was still holding, pressing the heel of his other hand into his eyes. Harry had demanded an explanation, been desperate to fix whatever was wrong, but Mac just kept saying he wasn't happy anymore and that it wasn't working. So here Harry was, hiding out by the urinals, a good way into getting very trashed and trying not to cry. Fuck. You alright over there? Harry jumped, having not realized someone had come out of one of the stalls and was eyeing him up curiously. Harry blinked as embarrassment crept up his neck. This guy was gorgeous. White blonde hair, tall, slim but not too skinny, and grey eyes that danced even in the shadowy light of the loos. He was drying his hands on a couple paper towels, looking at Harry and waiting for a response. Yeah, he said tiredly. I'm fine. Just drinking in the toilet by yourself for kicks. The guy's mouth twitched up at the corner, and he dropped the paper into the bin beside him. Harry laughed. Yup, he affirmed. Seemed like the best thing to do. Ouch, replied the blonde, folding his arms and leaning against one of the sinks. The alternative must have been pretty dire. Harry bit his lip, then took another swig of beer. He was never going to impress this guy, and his chances of faking it were pretty grim right now, so he decided to be honest, no matter how pitiful he sounded. This night couldn't get much worse. My ex just popped up, he said ruefully, attempting a smile. Ah, said the guy with a nod. You broken up long? A couple of weeks ago, Harry said, taking in a deep breath. Not been with anyone longer than him. It came as a bit of a shock. So you're lurking in here until he goes away? The guy asked, cocking an eyebrow. Harry bobbed his head from side to side. Hadn't really thought beyond lurking, he admitted. And the guy laughed. Fair enough. I'm Draco. He stuck his hand out, and Harry took a second to respond. Harry, he said, not sure what else to add that didn't make him sound even more pitiful. You often come to the rescue of miserable, recently dumped losers? Only the hot ones? Draco smirked, and Harry perked up immediately. This fit guy with an exotic name thought Harry was hot. That bolstered his bruised ego enough to get him to stand up straight. Yeah, he said dryly, as he rubbed lingering tears from his eyes. Super hot. He laughed and rolled his shoulders. I guess I better go out and face the music. Show him how over him and his stupid self I am. The guy, Draco, pushed off the sink and looked Harry up and down mischievously. Want a hand in that? Harry swallowed. In what way? He asked, aware he sounded a little stupid. But Draco just grinned further at him as he came closer. In this way, he said, and slipped his hand, literally, into Harry's. He looked down and tried his best not to sway. Oh, he said. If you want. And suddenly, Draco didn't sound all that confident. So Harry hurriedly squeezed his fingers and beamed up at him. What I meant, he explained, is, would you really do that for me? We've only just met. What can I say? Said Draco with a shrug, but looking happier again. I've got a soft spot for the underdog. Come on, let's go get you another drink. So Harry let himself be led back into the main throng of the bar, grinning despite himself as this beautiful man guided him up to the bar where they joined the couple of layers of people waiting to get served. Can you point him out to me? He said into Harry's ear, tickling him with his breath and sending a pulse right down to Harry's groin. He said, and looked around, trying not to be too obvious. Yeah, he said with a nod, aware of how close their faces were. He's the tall guy in the end booth, curly hair, athletic. He swallowed down the lump that threatened to get lodged in his throat. Cormac McLagan. Draco rolled his eyes. Looks like a twat, he said pointedly, and Harry couldn't help but snort. Part of him wanted to defend Mac, but the other relished in having someone, especially someone as fuckable as this, unashamedly on his side. What are you drinking? Draco asked. Just a beer would be great, Harry replied, showing him the one he had almost finished. He didn't want to do any more shots. He wanted to keep his wits about him while such a catch was holding his hands. And he was still holding his hand, the simple touch sending waves of excitement rippling over Harry's skin. Mac never liked holding hands, or showing much affection at all for that matter. He said it was too sissy to do that, clinging onto some perverse idea that, because he was gay, he had to somehow hike up his masculinity to compensate. It had been a constant source of hurt and annoyance to Harry, and just touching someone like this, unabashedly out in the open, was giving him a thrill. Draco's hand was warm and dry, and he kept rubbing the pad of his thumb back and forth over Harry's knuckles reassuringly. Draco insisted on buying their drinks, and as they moved back away from the bar, he let go of Harry's hand to place it on the small of his back possessively. Don't look, he murmured, followed by another hasty, don't look, as Harry's head went to snap automatically back. Okay. He spotted you and he's looking a little bit sick, Draco reported, sounding rather pleased with himself. What do you want to do? Introduce me? Ignore him? Harry shook his head. As much as he wanted to make himself feel better, he was able to appreciate that going over to Mac was a bad idea. He didn't want his opinion. He didn't want him back. He just wanted him to know that Harry wasn't quite so destroyed as he thought he might have been. Let's go find my friends, he suggested instead. Draco smiled and leaned over, closer. Okay, he said, and pecked a kiss on his cheek. If he hadn't been pushing Harry forward, Harry might not have moved at all, he was so stunned. It was a pretty chaste kiss, all things considered, but still, that this guy was willing to put on such a show for him, having only just met him, it was sweet, and, well, it just felt nice. Was that for his benefit or yours? Harry's slightly drunken tongue betrayed him by asking. Draco pressed their bodies together as they slipped through the crowd. Actually, he breathed, I rather hoped it was for yours. Harry blushed. Was it wrong to hope this wasn't all an act? Seamus and Dean's jaws dropped when they broke through to where they'd managed to snag a couple chairs by a table in the corner. Hey, guys, Harry said, aware that Draco's hand was still on his waist. This is Draco. Draco, this is Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas. Draco Malfoy, he elaborated, reaching out to shake hands before they sat down. I just rescued Harry from the ogre over there. Harry shifted under his friend's gaze. Max here, he explained. Asshole, said Dean instantly. Motherfucker, added Seamus in his Irish lilt, clinking his bottle onto Draco's. You're a good man there, showing him Harry's worth sticking around for. Yes, he is, Dean added firmly, and only slurring his words a little. Harry, you deserve way better than that slug. Harry grimaced and held out his hands at his two mates. My friends. I pay them to be nice about me, obviously. Draco slotted in easily with the three of them, and Harry began to relax again as they laughed and chatted their way through the football and the latest series of whatever reality shows had the most entertaining celebs in. He insisted on getting the next round in, and then by the time they'd gotten to Seamus's turn, he'd forgotten all about stupid McLagan and his cruel over-the-phone crushing of their relationship. That is, until Mac appeared out of nowhere at the edge of their table. Harry sputtered his beer down his chin and hurriedly wiped it away as the conversation stilted. Mac! He all but squeaked. Hi? Hi, Harry, he said, eyes flicking to Draco. How you doing? We were just having some drinks, said Seamus, staring daggers, and getting to know Draco here. Yeah, agreed Dean, clinking his own bottle loudly with Draco's. We're having a lovely time. Harry had broken out into a sweat, but Draco seemed just as cool and easy as ever beside him. Draco Malfoy, he said, offering out his hand like he had done with Seamus and Dean to a slightly bewildered McLagan. And you are? Mac's eyes widened. I'm Harry's... I'm Mac. Nice to meet you, Mac, said Draco, then settled back into the booth and draped his arm easily around Harry's shoulders. There it was again, that touching that Mac always denied him, and suddenly Harry felt a burst of fresh energy rush through him. How have you been? He asked connivingly, reaching his hand up to entwine his fingers with Draco by his shoulders. Mac frowned, as if he was regretting coming over. I was going to see if you wanted to join us, but... He trailed off, and Harry smiled at him. I don't think that's a very good idea, really, he said, cocking an eyebrow. Do you? It sends a rather confusing signal about you breaking up with me. Over the phone. Seamus coughed into his fist. Mac had the good grace to look embarrassed. Right, he muttered over the music. Okay, well, I guess I'll see you around. Bye, said Harry, with a firm smile. But he held his breath until his ex had fully disappeared from view. Seamus burst out laughing, earning a clip on the ear from Dean. You all right, mate? He asked Harry, concerned. Harry started breathing again, and realized his hand was still linked with Draco's. He glanced up to see him looking fondly at him, and something light fluttered in his chest. Yeah, he said, surprised at his honesty. I think I'm okay. Good, said Draco, bumping his hip onto Harry's fondly. Dean announced the next round was on him, but Seamus snipped up too, leaving Harry alone with Draco. Thank you, he told him, as quietly as he could over the music. You've been really kind to me tonight. But Draco licked his lips in a downright sinful manner, his eyes looking Harry up and down. I think I've been far more selfish than kind, he said, and Harry's insides gave a little squeeze. He's obviously an idiot to let go of a guy like you. I don't intend on being that stupid. He toyed with Harry's fingers, avoiding his gaze. I mean, if you're interested. Seamus and Dean took that moment to arrive back, their trays filled with beers and some strong-looking shots. Come on, boys, Seamus cried out, passing them around. I want to propose a toast. Harry reluctantly untangled himself from Draco, but not before he caught his eye and gave him a shy smile. He allowed himself to be presented with a Jaeger bomb that the four of them held aloft. To new beginnings, Draco said, a hint of hope in his voice. To Harry, Dean added. To the look on that git's face, Seamus cried. Harry beamed fondly at them all. To friends, he said, then knocked back his glass in one go. Seamus and Dean didn't last much longer than that, heading off to catch a bus home, leaving Harry with Draco alone once more. I'm interested, Harry said out of the blue, fiddling with his shot glass. In you. In this. Draco leaned in closer, the sweet tang of Jaeger on his breath. Really? He said happily, and Harry snuggled in closer to him. He nodded. I can't promise it will be all smooth sailing, he said, but, well, I like you. I like you too, Draco affirmed, trailing his fingertips up Harry's arm and making him shiver. But I'm not talking about a pretend rebound thing to make your ex jealous. I really like you. Harry considered his words carefully through the alcohol haze. You've made me forget all about him, he said. Like wind blowing away all the cobwebs, I feel fresh and, I don't know, optimistic, I guess. He smiled and shook his head. It's hard not to feel tossed away when someone tells you you're not enough anymore, but you make me feel special already, and... He bit his lip and chanced a playful look through his lashes. You're fucking gorgeous and funny and don't seem to have much time for bullshit. It's a good first impression. Good, said Draco, then suddenly leaned away. Come on, get your coat. Harry felt cold from the sudden loss of contact. We're going? Well, that depends, actually, he said, stopping to consider. Where do you live? About 10 minutes away, Harry replied, and Draco beamed again. Brilliant, he said, getting his jacket over his shoulders. In that case, I'm going to walk you home. Harry let himself be led once more across the bar, slowly pushing past people still in the swing of their night. Harry almost caught himself thinking whether or not Cormac was still there, whether he was seeing Harry leaving with someone else, when he found he didn't really care. This wasn't about him, this was about him and Draco, and the realization made Harry's insides squirm with excitement. They chatted easily as Harry guided them through the night, making the familiar walk home. Draco pointed out a constellation he owed his name to, near the Big Dipper, and Harry made some quip about him being written in the stars before he realized what he'd said. Draco, though, looked pleased. "Oh, you better believe it's fate," he said with a wink. "A guy like me doesn't pop up just by chance." Harry was a nervous wreck by the time they got to the front of his building, fumbling with his keys. He said eloquently. "Do you want to come up for another drink?" Draco stepped in closer, touching his hands to Harry's elbows, stilling him from where he hadn't even realized he'd been shaking so much. "Not tonight," he said. "No?" Harry couldn't hide his disappointment, but Draco came in even closer and moved his left hand up to caress Harry's face. "No. I don't think we should rush this. There's no need to race through everything on the first day." Harry licked his lips. "Right," he said evenly, but he was spiraling down quite quickly into rejection territory. "Call me crazy," Draco said warmly, "but I'd like you to remember our first night together. Every single moment of it." He swept his thumb over Harry's cheekbone, and suddenly, Harry didn't feel so dejected. He felt like he was on fire. "Are you busy tomorrow?" Draco carried on. "We could spend the day together." Harry nodded. "No. I mean, yes. I mean, no, I'm not busy, and I'd love to spend the day together." Draco chuckled and brushed a lock of Harry's unruly black hair back from his forehead. "I'll come around about 10ish, yeah? I've got your number if anything comes up." "You do?" Harry asked. He didn't remember giving that over, but Draco smirked. "Dean made sure I had it earlier," he said, and Harry couldn't help but grin. "They really care about you, you know. It's not hard to see why." Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He just stared up into those silvery grey eyes. Draco brought his right hand up and cupped the other side of Harry's face, and Harry brought his own hands up to rest on either side of Draco's hips. Harry felt his eyes flutter closed as Draco inched a little closer to him, and then the kiss was perfect, warm and soft and moist. Draco gently parted his lips a little, molding them into Harry's, settling into a perfect rhythm that had Harry thinking they'd been doing this forever. And yet, the fireworks going off in his chest let him remember just how brand new this was. He leant in, eager for more, and Draco was happy to oblige. After a while, he was very proud to be the one to pull away. "Night, Draco," he said softly. "See you tomorrow." Draco's lazy smile illuminated his face under the starry night sky. "See you tomorrow, Harry," he promised. "Sleep well." "You too," Harry said, as he let him go and watched him walk away. Tomorrow, he whispered to himself, as he let himself into the building and allowed his happiness float him all the way up to his flat.